You may recall from our other sources of information the references to Warren Buffett's focus on accounting and financials.
Yes, and hopefully you've reviewed that material. Today we're going to present to you a webinar that was pre-recorded by David and I regarding internal controls. We hope you enjoy.
Today, David leads the firm Vectar Onsite CPA's Technical Advisors and Associates, Inc. Better known as Vectar Onsite, the CPA firm provides on-hand solutions to chaotic conditions for business leaders striving for excellence in converting their strategy into manageable, sustainable tactics. He has served with the U.S. Army and worked with a subsidiary of Johnson & Johnson Company, as well as a local favorite, Supreme Corporation. There's many wonderful things I could tell you about David, but our time is limited. So at this time, I'd like to present to you David Crowell.
Thanks very much, Rob. We're talking about internal controls today, and they are literally everywhere. Accounting, in fact, is just one form of internal controls. If you'd like to, you can reference our website and the blog that's there on internal controls. We're going to be looking today at the CPA's role in internal controls and as a technical advisor. The CPA has a background in obviously both finance and typically, because of the close relationship to IT, can know ERP systems very well to advise a business on how to set up their administration and their accounting systems.
Let me ask you this. Obviously, there are many things that are happening there. So you would say a CPA wears many hats?
Absolutely. They wear a technology hat, integrating different parts of the organization with information. They assist other departments. For example, with marketing, how are we growing? What are our margins? Those sorts of things.
And I suppose that also ties in with the integration. For example, if you have QuickBooks and websites and things of that nature that need to communicate together. And obviously, our main topic today, that's another hat.
Yes, the CPA can help organize the financial and administration spaces within the company. Oftentimes owners are very forward-looking in their own market, in growing their businesses, or they're very good at getting things accomplished for delivering the product to the customer, but they aren't necessarily focused on organizing information financially, and that information is ultimately going to be needed for the IRS and for making business decisions later on. Controls will also help in lowering the profile of the business, and the CPA also is qualified to supervise the bookkeeper of the organization, whereas the business owner might not be qualified to know whether they're doing their jobs correctly.
No, that's interesting, because when I think of a CPA firm, I mean, I do think of bookkeeping, but I also just think of taxes. But you've mentioned a lot of other things here that you typically do not think of when you're talking about an accounting firm. So I'm curious, what would you suggest some of the best ways to use a CPA most effectively?
Well, I would advise actually having a CPA set up your ERP system. Oftentimes there's a big mistake in thinking that the IT organization knows how to set up the business system. They certainly know how to install the software, but they don't necessarily understand the business architecture of the accounting and what's feeding the accounting in the various other departments. Having your CPA be your bookkeeper to understand your business for a month or so and set up your accounting system is something that we do. A CPA can be sure that you're taking advantage of everything that's available. Obviously, preparing the tax return is an important function, but there is feedback information from the tax return back to the financial statements that's very important. If all you're getting from your CPA is a tax return, you're losing out on a lot of information opportunities, and perhaps growth opportunities. Another thing that CPA can be used very effectively with is reviewing or performing preparations of the financial statements. Once again, we're trying to keep the financial statements or the model in line with reality and with the business owner's instincts. If the model reflects the business owner's instincts, then it's the best situation. There are obviously two situations where the model might not reflect the business owner's instincts. One is if there's a mistake in the financials, and using the business owner's instincts as an internal control over finding errors is perfect. The other obviously deviation from reality in the model is if the business owner has forgotten something, and we've all forget something. I just can't remember what we had for lunch yesterday. Oftentimes, a business owner might say that doesn't match my instincts, and it's a red flag. And a red flag isn't that there is a problem, but that there might be a problem, and it warrants investigation. Payroll is another one where using the CPA is very important in my view. Payroll is very complicated. There are federal rules, there are state rules. Frankly, I don't know how business owners do this all themselves and run the production side of their businesses. There are naturally going to be times where the model deviates from reality. If you have any transaction that hasn't been recorded, you have a model that doesn't reflect reality. There are various controls, including reconciliations and processes that can be put in place, checklists to make sure things happen that are important. It's not necessarily critical that the model be exactly in line with the business every minute of the day, but if it runs within a reasonable bandwidth, oscillating around reality, so that you can make reasonable business decisions. You can't necessarily expect every single credit card transaction to be keyed or recorded the instant that it was swiped at whatever store, but to get that in within a reasonable period of time is important.
Yeah, so I've obviously and I'm sure many people joining us today have greatly maybe underestimated how important a CPA could be, sort of because of what I mentioned earlier. You typically just think of the bookkeeping and the taxes being done, but as you just indicated, this idea that you could also serve as a general business consultant and also help with integration of technology. I mean, that's kind of new. I was curious, do you have, if there's anybody else out there who's interested and wants to learn more about services you guys offer? Do you have any programs available?
Absolutely. We offer a free consultation where basically we come out and take a look at the business. You can ask us questions. We can kind of size up the service offerings that we can help you with. Once again, accounting is just one of many internal controls.
That's a great deal. Anybody who's interested, I'm assuming they could just visit your website and find out more information?
Absolutely, there are links there.
Okay, that's great. Now, let's say I'm a business owner. What are some indications for the mom and pop or the manufacturer, that feels like, I feel like my numbers should say this, but they always say that instead.
If the model is not reinforcing your instincts, that's an indication that you could use some help. Another indication is that you've got bottlenecks. Things are piling up in the office and not getting put into the computer system. If the accounts don't line up with what the bank's saying they are, if the credit card statement is coming in with balances that are different than are showing on your financial books, those are indications that you probably need some assistance.
Now, wouldn't a bookkeeper, basically, like a bookkeeper could solve or should be able to identify these types of things when you?
Well, the interesting thing about that is that a bookkeeper might be transactionally oriented, but if the foundational information hasn't been set up properly, it's just going to confuse the situation more. Kind of drawing back on a slide that we talked about, actually having the CPA perform bookkeeping for a month or two makes sense so that the model gets established properly. Because a model that doesn't reflect reality is basically running amok. It's producing a lot of computers will produce data very rapidly, but that data is worthless and meaningless if the model wasn't established properly to start with.
But for a lot of businesses, smaller, mid-sized businesses, the idea of a CPA seems very expensive, and so that's why I think you typically get a bookkeeper, and at the end of the year you take your taxes to the H&R Block or wherever.
You're deferring the pain. The problem is that it's 3 times as expensive to figure out what's been done wrong and then correct it, as opposed to getting it done right the first time. So you'll end up spending less. You'll have less cash flow in the beginning, but at a higher rate, you'll be spending 3 times the time at the higher rate to correct it. And if you talk to business owners who've experienced it, many of them will say, "I wish I'd gotten somebody who knew what they were doing involved to start with, because the amount of time that I lost and having to spend money with a more expensive resource to get it fixed was unbelievably expensive in comparison to what I thought I was saving."
So would it be fair to say that even just having a CPA in and of itself isn't necessarily as important as a CPA who understands my business and my type of business?
Absolutely. We've run into numerous cases where the CPA didn't understand the business. They saw dollars coming into an account that was not revenue. It belonged to a portion of the dollars that were hitting the bank account were revenue, but all of it wasn't. And there was a sizable shift in income and a tax savings as a result of truly understanding how the business transactions were flowing.
Excellent. Well, we thank you once again for joining us today, and to learn more about David as well as his firm, Vectar Onsite CPAs, visit vectaronsite.com, and we'll see you at the next webinar.